Without realizing it and almost without exception, the 6 sins we have discussed so far have been in the order of what I struggle with from least to greatest. Of course, gluttony would be one of my weaker sins since Hong Kong has gotten rid of their buffet, and anger remains high on the list since there are still in fact golf courses, and I still take my kids out in public. However, when it comes to sin, there can only be one queen. Welcome to On the Go at St. Joe. It goes by many names: pride, hubris, vainglory. We can see the danger of the sin just by its definition. Defined, pride is loving and esteeming oneself above others and above God. It is the excessive love of one's own excellence. What has pride done to have been crowned the mother of all sin? It certainly has a history, to say the least. The first sin ever committed was an act of pride when Satan refused to recognize God as his Lord. Pride was the snare that seduced all of humanity in Adam and Eve as they turned towards their own ambitions to seek a life without God. King Saul lost his kingship to David courtesy of this vice. The prophets, both major and minor, warn of the dangers of pride to the people of Israel. After you read the writings of the prophets and understand their warnings, it is not hyperbole to say that pride was the biggest factor in bringing down the kingdom of Israel. In our first episode of Sin, we explained how sin is a decision. This decision is based on 2 criteria. First is, I knew what I was doing is a sin, and second is, I chose it anyway. Pride is at the heart of the statement, God, I know what you want, but I don't care. I want what I want. The Catholic Standard says the following on pride. On the one hand, pride is one particular vice, sinful in itself. On the other hand, it is a more general vice that is involved directly or indirectly in most other sins. Pride plays an especially large role in sins of malice. Sins of malice are those in which one directly and defiantly refuses to obey God, or refuses to be told what to do, or willfully insists that one knows better than God, the Church, or those entrusted with one's instruction and guidance. Pride plays a more indirect role in sins of weakness. Sins of weakness are those in which one acts sinfully, not so much out of defiance as out of a weak inability to do what one admits is right. Pride may be more indirectly present through careless neglect or growing in virtue or failure to seek God's help. Pride is directed not only at God but also at our neighbor. There are times when we refuse to submit to the instruction or authority of others who rightfully have that position. There are other times when we refuse to admit that others have gifts and abilities that we do not possess, and that we may in fact need in order to be completed. Further, we sometimes refuse to admit that others are just better at certain things than we are. In this way, pride is both impoverishing and isolating. Realizing now what sins of malice are, it is remarkably easy to identify the pride in much of the Old Testament, as well as the pride that is all too present in my life. In addition to impoverishing and isolating ourselves from God and one another, pride makes God secondary to yourself. It leads to the rejection of the fact that we are subject to God. You no longer rely or trust in His power and protection, but in your own talents and abilities. When you put God on the back burner, the only thing that can possibly take its place is sin. There is a dangerous chance to ignore all of the virtues we have previously discussed to combat the 7 deadly sins, if we fall into this trap of pride. Identical to pride in that it is the root of most, if not all, of the deadly sins, humility is equally required in order to practice each of the virtues. In short, humility is selflessness. C.S. Lewis has coined quite a clever and pretty popular saying. Humility is not thinking less of yourself, it is thinking of yourself less. It's the sense of understanding that we are not the star of the show. It is not all about us. Jesus has much to say about both pride and humility, so much that he has a parable for those 2 intertwined characteristics. Jesus tells the following parable in Luke chapter 14. He told a parable to those who have been invited, noticing how they were choosing the places of honor at the table. When you are invited by someone to a wedding banquet, do not recline at table in the place of honor. A more distinguished guest than you may have been invited by him, and the host who invited both of you may approach you and say, "Give your place to this man," and then you would proceed with embarrassment to take the lowest place. Rather, when you are invited, go and take the lowest place, so that when the host comes to you, he may say, my friend, move up to a higher position. Then you will enjoy the esteem of your companions at the table. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, but the one who humbles himself will be exalted. I believe one issue we have today because of pride is that people take themselves too seriously. One could find a lot of truth in one of my all-time favorite sayings by G.K. Chesterton. Angels can fly because they take themselves lightly. Until this episode was made, I always assumed the clever quote ended there. But he goes on, and what at first may seem like a long passage actually adds a lot of substance to what we've been discussing. The tattered cloak of the beggar will bear him up like the rayed plumes of the angels, but the king in their heavy gold and the proud in their robes of purple will all of their nature sink downwards, for pride cannot rise to levity or levitation. Pride is the downward drag of all things into an easy solemnity. Seriousness is not a virtue. It would be a heresy, but a much more sensible heresy, to say that seriousness is a vice. It is really a natural trend or lapse into taking oneself gravely, because it is the easiest thing to do. For solemnity flows out of men naturally, but laughter is a leap. It is easy to be heavy, hard to be light. Satan fell by the force of gravity. Wow, what a journey this has been. Thank God Happy Hour did not reach the list of the deadly sins, or this series may not have been possible to make. Speaking of happy, let's hit up the bulletin. We will have another work day here at the parish this Saturday on August 12th, after the 8:30 Mass until noon. Many hands make less work for everyone. Refreshments will be available and lunch will be provided. Coffee and conversation will be Sunday, August 13th on the plaza, weather permitting, after the 7:30, 9 o'clock, and 10:30 a.m. Masses. Join us for donuts, coffee, juice, and fellowship. Also on Sunday, August 13th at 7 p.m., please join us at the Mother of God Grotto on Bartley Street for our monthly rosary. The intention this month is for all church leaders, priests, and religious. We also take intentions from all of those present each month. Join us for our 9th annual Holy Trinity Golf Scramble. Cost is $200 per team. The scramble will take place Saturday, August 26th at Buffalo Trace Golf Course. Space is limited. Food and drinks will be provided throughout the event. Contact Steve Lukemeyer with any questions or to register. Thank you for your support of Holy Trinity Catholic Schools. We have added one final photography day for pictorial directory pictures, Tuesday, August 22nd. Online scheduling for the pictorial directory is available at www.ucdir.com. Click on Photography Appointment Scheduling login on the right side, enter an 1861 in the church code field, and enter photos in the church password field. Follow the prompts to schedule your family's appointment. The St. Joseph Choir is in need of singers. Anyone interested in joining can talk to our choir director, Paula Allis, after Mass on any Sunday, or just come to practice on any Thursday night at 7 p.m. at the Parish Center. All are welcome to join. Rehearsals are every Thursday, and we sing at the 9 a.m. Mass every other Sunday. If you have a big event coming up at your parish and want it mentioned on the show, give us a shout-out at our Facebook page, or email us at onthego@stjosephjasper.org, and we'll make sure we announce it. This invitation is for anyone from our surrounding parishes. As always, gang, it's been a blessing to give you this podcast today. However, like the chances of me having an episode on sin anytime soon, this podcast is at an end. Let us